Okay, today I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about Nicaraguan coffee. The people, the history, the landscape, why its coffee tastes so amazingly delicious, what sort of coffee flavors you're going to experience when you're tasting some of the region's coffees, and something you probably didn't even know about that makes Nicaragua so unique, something to do with the street names. I'm Ride, your Chief Espresso Officer, and this is your Nicaraguan Coffee Guide. For those of you who aren't all over their geography, don't worry, I wasn't for a long time as well. Nicaragua is actually located in Central America, just below Honduras and above Costa Rica. And it's actually the largest country in all of Central America. So with its lowland plains to the east and its jungles teeming with wildlife in the center and to the west, there might be jaguars and ocelots and even boa constrictors. But in the west, where most of the coffee is grown, there's a stretch of about 40 volcanoes, some of them still active, and that's where all the beautiful soil, rich with nutrients and fertile for growing those perfect coffee cherry seeds we call coffee beans. And there's an interesting fact about Nicaragua that you might not know, and that is that none of the places have street names or addresses on them. So if you were giving directions to someone about your house, you wouldn't say, I live at number 402 something or other street. You'd use reference points as like churches, lakes, even big rocks or traffic lights. And you'd use your address would be something like, I live 4 blocks from the church south of the church and half a block east of the red traffic light. Confusing for a lot of people, however, they love their system and of course they don't get lost. And maybe that's what Bono was singing about in the song Where the Streets Have No Name. But let's talk about the coffee of Nicaragua, as its history is an important part of its current economy. Coffee was first introduced to Nicaragua in about 1796. However, commercially it wasn't exported until the 1850s. And even then it was in high quantity rather than quality, and hasn't really shifted into the specialty coffee quality until recent years. Nowadays, it supports about 300,000 farmers across tens and thousands of farms, and 95% of it is grown at a higher altitude, making it a strictly high grown, as well as being a shade grown coffee, which gives it 2 certifications which add to the quality level in desirable coffees, and adding to that super intense and sweet richness that we have come accustomed to in some of the really nice coffees that we get. And for those of you who don't know, shade-grown coffee is really important to keeping that ecosystem running with birds and bees and other insects. The most common coffee variety grown in Nicaragua are part of the Arabica family, and these are Caturra, Catamor, Bourbon, yellow and red Catuí, and there's another special variety, actually the largest variety of coffee beans ever found and grown, Maragagipe, which are also known as elephant beans. And they can get to a size that's almost a third larger than every other type of coffee bean. And the major growing regions are Matagalpa, Jinotega, and Nueva Segovia, which are all located in the northwest regions where all the volcanoes are, and that rich, fertile volcanic soil supports that beautiful, high quality growth of the coffee cherries. So for the harvesting times in Nicaragua, they happen between October, usually the earliest is in October, to about February and March, which means we get their harvest in about May, June, or July, depending on which harvest we get. And most of the coffee is using a wet process, which gives it a crisp, clean, balanced flavor and mouthfeel. However, there are a few more washing stations popping up now throughout the regions, and they are getting into that honey process and that natural process coffee, which gives you that more intense, sweet, rich and deeper body. And if you're lucky enough to try the Maragagipe beans, the elephant beans, which are very rare, then you'll actually notice they have a brighter acidity, much higher acidity than most of the other coffees in Nicaragua, which are more known for being low levels of acidity. And they have a sweeter, heavier mouthfeel and a crisp, clean aftertaste. The farm that this particular coffee comes from is nestled near Cerro Dentale El Diablo National Forest and near another hill called Gobiado Hill, which has a very, very special legend go along with it. Apparently, the Prince of Gobiado was killed there, and he's now known as the Headless Horseback Rider, who haunts the hillside, and you can actually do tours up there and see if you can get scared by the ghost. And Finca La Jolla not only produces great tasting and quality coffee, but it also services the local farmers and their families by providing better housing projects for the families that work for the farm, as well as paying them social security incentives and extra money, so they actually end up earning about 1.5 times the average wage that a farmer would get in the local area. And they also provide an education for the children of the farmers who work on the farm, which is why I'm interested in working with farmers like these, because I feel like we need to increase the quality of life for these farmers, not only so that we can benefit by drinking lots of their delicious, yummy coffees, but also for the future generations of coffee farmers to come. The soil on this farm is volcanic soil and clay loam. And clay loam is a special type of clay because it holds all the nutrients in the soil, which makes for a better tasting coffee, and it also drains much more of the water much more easily. So it's perfect for growing long-lasting coffee cherry trees and getting a higher yield of cherries each harvest, as well as tasting much better in the cup. Now, this particular coffee has two types of varieties of coffee in it, Caturra and Bourbon. And the farmers will only pick the cherries once they're perfectly ripe, not underripe and not overripe. So that makes sure that all the coffee that we drink is super tasty, super delicious. Now, the farmers on this particular farm at Finca La Jolla are very focused on organic production methods. So they are using what is called a green crop fertilizer. And that's actually growing in the off season some extra trees that they recycle back into the earth, which then allows for drawing out more of the nutrients and minerals out of the deeper soil into the soil ready for the next year's harvest, as well as remediating the soil, just getting it ready for next year's crop. The ripe cherries are then floated in water and then deselected any of the imperfections, and then they're put onto raised sunbeds in the sun and are dried out and slowly turned over 15 to 20 days. And what that is called is a natural process, or sometimes referred to as honey washed processing, which is somewhere in between washed and natural processing. And this gives a much more complex, sugary and intense flavor to it, which brings toffee and cinnamon toast and a delicate raspberry acidity when you're drinking it as a black coffee. So to recap on these amazing coffees from Finca La Jolla, they're grown in the region of Jinotega at about 1,400 meters above sea level, and there are two varieties of Bourbon and Caturra, and they're naturally processed. And when you're drinking them as a black coffee, you're going to taste things like toffee, cinnamon toast, and a delicate raspberry acidity. And when you add milk into it, you're going to see that shift into a honey, vanilla, and light chocolate. Okay, so firstly, I'm going to show you how to make it as an espresso. We're going to do two versions, one without milk, and then one adding in some lovely milk, and I'm going to give you two different versions. Now, firstly, you want to have 20 grams of coffee. So make sure that you get it nice and level. Obviously, you're going to grind it, but this is how you can measure it. 20 grams of coffee and ground nice and finely for espresso. And I'm going to do a bit of a pre-infusion, and then I'm going to ramp it up and then ramp it back down again. So it's going to get a very different extraction to what your machine might do at home, but it's the same process, just 20 grams in and 40 mils out in around about 30 seconds. So let's get to it. Now we're going to try it without milk. Oh yeah, it's that very honey, toffee. There's a very cinnamony spice to it. So it's like nutmeggy, cinnamon sort of flavors with a just very nice, delicate acidity in there, which, yeah, that is that raspberry acidity. Okay, now we've got our espresso base, we're gonna see what it tastes like on milk as well. So make sure you get some nice non-homogenized milk, because that's just extra creamy, delicious. Fill it up to just above the start of the nozzle of the spout here. All right, so let's get steaming. All right, now to try it. It's very light. I would say you'd have to put in a double shot in that size one to make it cut through the milk, because it is very, very vanilla, light chocolate sort of flavor, and you lose a lot of that crispiness that I found in spices that I had when I was out without milk. So definitely, if you're going to have it with milk, put a double shot on and less milk, or even a piccolo might be fantastic for this sort of coffee. But it's very smooth, delicious. Okay, so for a plunger, or French press as this is more commonly known, we're going to use our friend R2D2, and we're going to use 17 grams of coffee to 350 mils of water. And we're going to see what that tastes like without milk first, and we might add a bit of milk just to see if it changes much in the flavor. Let's get the kettle on. Alright, let's give it a try. Very honey, very soft. This is a much smoother way of making the Nicaraguan than the espresso. The espresso, the power and the force behind it creates a lot more of those spices coming through and that intense flavor. This is a lot smoother, much more mellow. Very delicious still. We'll add a bit of milk and see what it changes to. Let's give this a try. Oh, very mellow. It's like a vanilla honey tea. It's gorgeous. Yeah, if you want something really smooth, I'd definitely choose this for an afternoon. I wouldn't be doing this for your first morning kick of the day. Afternoon, summer's day, Sunday afternoon, drink something like this as a plunger with milk. Definitely smoothest drink in the afternoon. So that's it. That's everything you need to know about Nicaraguan coffee, and in particular, this special coffee from Finca La Jolla in Jinotego. And if you like what you've learned today, please share it, give us a subscribe, give us a like and comment, and help me spread the word around the world of this fantastic, delicious drink we call coffee, and the beautiful farmers who are behind it all at the very beginning of it, letting them spread their stories to everyone around the world so that we can all share in this delicious drink. I'm Ride, Chief Espresso Officer. Enjoy your brew.